President Trump is being called out for avoiding the press that he does not like. Now, I go to, of course, evidence of this by going to one of the last press conferences Donald Trump had. Now, after that press conference, you had a CNN White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Remember, Acosta made a little bit of trouble when he started yelling out questions towards Donald Trump because he wouldn't answer some previous questions. Now, Acosta is going to go on and talk to Wolf Blitzer about this, and basically call him out for only calling on friendly conservative outlets so that he can be tossed a bunch of softball questions. Now let's take a look at that interview right there.
The two questions that were asked or called upon from the president in this news conference went to the Christian Broadcasting Network, which is obviously owned by Pat Robertson, the televangelist down in Virginia. It's a very conservative broadcasting network, and townhall.com, which is a very conservative news website. And so in the last three news conferences, Wolf, all of the questions to the American news media have been handled by conservative press. And I think, Wolf, there's no other way to describe it, but the fix is in. This White House, this president does not want to answer questions, critical questions, about his associates, his aides' contacts with the Russians during the course of that campaign, just as his national security advisor is being run out of this White House on a rail. And so I think that this only, they may think that this is being cute, or they think this is strategic in terms of trying to shield the president from questions, but those questions can only be shielded for so long, Wolf.
Well, he's right. I mean, the fix is in. They really don't want to answer tough questions. In this case, the questions happen to be about Russia, but any other sort of tough questions on when it comes to policy, Donald Trump, or scandals inside of his administration, he doesn't want to answer. So he calls on, of course, very, very friendly conservative outlets. Now, Business Insider notes that over the last several press conferences, the reporters and commentators whom Trump has called on have not asked him about major controversies hanging over his administration, including the issue with Michael Flynn, or possible connections between Russia and the Trump administration. Now, there are a couple of examples of people who are connected to Russia. You had Paul Manafort, Corey Lewandowski, and Roger Stone. So those guys, of course, had their own ties to Russia. And, oh, look, they were all in the Trump campaign. Oh, that's interesting. But anyway, yes, let's not talk about that, though. No. Let's not take questions about that specific issue. Let's take softball questions from different other people, because Russia, can't talk about that. Can't talk about that at all. There are certain people whose eyes and ears glaze over when you talk about this issue. And it's a little frustrating because there is an actual issue here that we need to investigate. We need to look into this to see if whether or not you do have business ties with Russia, and that might compromise your ability to govern in a fair way and deal with them in a way that is for America's best interest and not just Russia's best interest. And that's why it's important to look into it. Again, it deserves a lot of investigation. And there could be some shady shit. We don't know. That's why we should look into it. We shouldn't accept everything that we hear outright coming from, even corporate media, but we should ask questions. We should ask questions of our intelligence agencies, and we should definitely ask questions about our administration. It's about going to the truth. It's about holding people accountable. And that's the whole point. But again, let's not talk about this, says the Trump administration. Instead, let's call on conservative outlets. Now, I got some examples of this. Now, on Wednesday's press conference, Town Hall's Katie Pavlik, conservative commentator, asked Trump to lay out, quote, compromises you have in mind for a potential Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, dude. How's that a softball? That's actually a tough question. I'm like, what are you going to do? What kind of compromises are you planning to make? Well, remember, this is Trump's wheelhouse. He loves this stuff. He likes making deals, and look, that's great. I want to make a Mideast peace deal. I am interested to know. So, in my opinion, that's not a bad question. But again, you're ignoring some of the other stuff that is really important when it comes to Michael Flynn. So, as well as some of the other stuff. Now, again, I want him to make a deal, and I said that I would give him a lot of credit between if he gets a deal between Israel and Palestine. But again, since Trump is a good deal maker and he enjoys this stuff, it is a little bit of a softball question. Now, another question came from the CBN network's David Brody, who alluded to the Trump campaign's connections with Russia, but not attempt to dig further into Trump's knowledge of the communications or the ongoing investigation. Instead, he asked if some of those events with those communications to Russia would hamper the nuclear deal that we have with them. And of course, there's more evidence that he's only choosing conservative media. During a press conference on Monday before Flynn's resignation, Trump selected reporters from the Daily Caller and Sinclair Media, outlets generally considered sympathetic to Trump's presidency. You had Scott Thurman from ABC 7 Sinclair asking about the philosophical differences between Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, while the Daily Caller's Caitlin Collins asked Trump to name the biggest security threat to the United States. Softball. Here you go. Here's what's the biggest security threat to the United States? I hope you say ISIS. Look, maybe it's not fair to call these questions softball. It's more like, I don't know, t-ball. Because my dad played softball, and, I'm a little sympathetic, right? I'm not going to call it soft. These are t-ball questions. Stuff that's more like up his alley. He's not going to ask questions of people that he's not going to call on people who are going to ask him tough questions about what's going on in his administration. No, he's not going to do that. He's gonna call on the people that are gonna set up these nice tee up these nice little soft t-ball questions, so that when he answers it, he can get a pat on the back and a participation trophy. Now, also another example, during his press conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, he only took questions from outlets owned by Rupert Murdoch, who, of course, has long-standing personal and financial ties to Donald Trump. I think it's pretty obvious we see a pattern here. This is Donald Trump punishing media outlets that he doesn't agree with, as well as, of course, avoiding tough questions that he has absolutely no answers for. Dodging the media, man. That's all he's doing right now, is dodging media that he does not like. That's a bit of a problem when it comes to the President of the United States. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.